Okay, so it does. Can rejoin. All right. So before we dive into the week, there are some few things you need to get yourself with. So if you don't have some toolings, you should try all your best to get those toolings before you can participate in the practical sessions. I think we already mentioned some to you in the previous cohort. You need to have MetaMask, a very important application. And as a developer, you should have Node.js installed on your machine. So for week one, you don't need Node.js because you will be doing everything on your browser. I think week one and week two, you will not need Node.js, but you can get it installed now before we get to where you will need to use it. So one is MetaMask. You also need Node.js. So we shared the links with you guys. I will share it again after this call. But you also need a Node.js. And yeah, so aside that, you also need a GitHub account, which I think you already have. You will need a GitHub account because this week one, you start with writing your first smart contract and you climax everything with GitHub. So you need to have a GitHub account, which is very important. All right, so if you don't know Remix, I'm going to share my screen with you to just show you what Remix is. Remix is an IDE, that's Integrated Development Environment, where you write your code purposely for Solidity programming. So it is not recommended for writing, code for a very big application, but for starting and then also writing just some smart contracts which require only some few lines of code, you can use Remix. So because we are starting now, we will start with Remix IDE. But when we move forward, we will leave Remix and come back to VS Code. So that's another thing you should have on your laptops. You need Visual Code Editor on your laptops. So we have different other code editors, but for the purpose of this bootcamp, we recommend that you download and install VS Code Editor. There are some extensions, especially Solidity extensions, which are very useful on VS Code. So that is why we are recommending that to you. Maybe after this bootcamp, you can decide to use any code editor that you are more familiar with. And yeah, that is it. So let's go to Remix. I'm just going to take you to Remix for you to see what Remix environment is. But tomorrow morning at exactly 6 a.m., the project for this week will be released to you. So you can check the resources. That's where you'll be learning. So like we already told you, most of what you'll be doing in this cohort 2 will be based on the Solidity programming course, because the Solidity programming course has all the necessary resources that a beginner need to have. And we have tried our best to simplify it in a way that as a beginner, you can cope with it. Actually, it will not teach you everything about programming, but with the basic fundamentals that you need to start building in Solidity programming, the Solidity Programming 101 course is perfect for that. So first in this week, you will need Remix and you also need GitHub. So these are the two things you'll be working with in this week. That is Remix IDE and then GitHub. So let's check what Remix is. Let me share my screen. So when you open Google, you can just search Remix, or just on your browser, you can search remix.ethereum. Remix.ethereum, and then you have Remix open. Now I'm going to take you through the development environment, the Remix development environment. We don't need to spend so much time on this session, so I will just do it briefly so that you can have a clue of how it is. All right. So, all right. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, yeah,
So when you visit Remix, you first get this pop-up. Welcome to Remix. In order to understand your needs better, we would like to know how you typically use Remix. So here you just need to start what you are here to do. So of course, I will recommend that you choose learning. Now, when you choose the learning, Remix will try to configure their platform in a way that will best suit a learner like you. So you can choose learner, and when you choose learner, that is all. This is what you will see. Now, when you get to Remix, so when you get to Remix, they will show you all of this, trying to take you through. All right, so I'll cancel it and show you what. All right, so if you use VS Code, you will know that this is not new to any programming environment. So when you get to Remix, what you normally see on VS Code, it looks similar to what you have here. All right, so here we have the file explorer, where I'm showing you here now. That's the file explorer, and this is where you will have your folders and then your applications. This particular place. Now, when you come here, they will give you a default workspace. Now, a workspace is on every developer environment, like VS Code, for example. When you create a folder, now that folder represents your workspace, right? So when you get to Remix, they give you a default folder, and when you click here, just where the simple story. So this is where I was doing my. Now, when you come, you only get this, a default workspace. This is what you have on Remix. But you don't need to work on this workspace. You need to work on your own workspace. So the project that will be given to you tomorrow, you'll be asked to create your own workspace when you get here. Now, creating your workspace is very simple. You see this menu here. You click on the menu. Now, when you click on the menu, you can see create a blank workspace. You click on
yeah,
create a blank workspace, then you name it. For example, let's say my first smart contract. You can do it like this, my first smart contract. Now, one thing about just you cannot space it. If you want to space, then you should use underscore to space. For instance, if you want to say my first smart contract, let's say something like this, you need to use an underscore, all right? So normally, because Remix is a browser-based application, sometimes I do face some challenge. Let me try to see if it will happen here. Now, you may want to create the new workspace with a name, and the name will not be picked. Let me copy this first, then I'll click on OK. Aha, good. So you can see that it didn't work. But the workspace is created though, but the name was not picked. So you can check here. We now have the default workspace. Now this is the workspace I was working on, and this is the new one I just created. Now you can rename it. How do we rename it? Make sure that the newly created workspace is what is selected here. Now you click on the workspace actions. That's the menu symbol here. You just click on it. You can see rename workspace. Click on rename
yeah.
workspace and then rename
Okay.
it. So let me paste what I copied. And good, that is it. It has been renamed. So my first smart contract. So when you get to Remix, this is what you can close this particular place. So this is the home. You can close it because you don't need it unless you want to learn some things. Now, because you chose we chose learning, Remix will recommend some resources for you to start learning. So here you can see start coding, ZK, Semaphore, and all of that. So these are just resources that Remix is recommending for you to, explore around. But you don't need this one, so you can just close it here, home, and come to home and close it. All right. So now we are on the newly created workspace, which is my first smart contract. All right. So let me leave there and come to this place. So search files. On Remix, we have here, which is a file explorer. Then on your far left, you have these menu items, and they all have um, their functions. So this one, I don't need to explain this one to you. This is where you search for your files, but you are not using this even now. The most important ones you will use are this. One is Solidity compiler. So the project that will be given to you tomorrow, you will need to compile after you write your smart contract. And after writing your smart contract, you also need to deploy it. And this is where you come to deploy your smart contract. Now, after deploying your smart contract, you need to push the entire code. That's the entire workspace. You need to push it onto GitHub. And this is where you do the pushing. But before you do the pushing to GitHub, you have to configure your Remix environment before you can push to GitHub. So during the week, because that will be the last part of the project. So during the week, we will have these live sessions where we'll take you to how to configure your Remix IDE, or how you can connect your Remix IDE to your GitHub account so that you can simply push your code from Remix to GitHub, because you'll be submitting your project with the public repository link that you'll be creating on your GitHub. So what you will do, getting to the end of this project, is that you create a repository that will be a public one, and then you add it as a remote on your Remix platform. Then after adding that on your Remix platform, you push it from here to your GitHub, and then you copy the public link on the GitHub, come to Classroom, and then submit it. So that's how you'll be done. That's what we done in this week. And when you submit, we will then get the link to your repository. So we don't need to come to Remix here. What we need is the public repository, because that's where your code will be. And that's what we can easily analyze and make comments. So we can check there to see whether you have really done the work. All right.
Okay.
So that is how it is. Now let's do simple thing. For instance, so my first smart contract. This week you'll be asked to create a file called simple storage. Now we are not going to do it. Let me try something. So let's say first contract. So let's try something. Let's say first contract dot so. Okay. So before you get to this part, in the model 1 of the Solidity Programming 101, you have to first read about smart contract, which is very short text. You read about smart contracts. You also read about Solidity, introduction to Solidity programming. So inside the introduction to Solidity programming, you learn that to initialize or create a Solidity file, the extension you will use is SOL. So just like when you are initializing a JavaScript file, you have to use JS as an extension. If it is TypeScript, you use TS, right? So all of these programming languages, they have their extensions. And because here we are dealing with Solidity, to create a Solidity file, you will need to use the .sol extension. All right, so it is very simple. To create a file inside your working environment, make sure that the working environment is what is selected here. Then over here, we have these symbols. So this one is create a new file, create a new folder, open a file from your file system, upload, and all of that. All right, so you'll be using the crate. So you'll be using the crate, just like VS Code. The same thing happens here. You use the crate, you click on the crate, then say add contract. So let's say add contract. All right, dot so, and click enter. Okay, so now the contract is created. You can see add contract dot so, and the environment is open here for you to start writing your code. All right, so when you read Solidity programming, the module 1, where we have, I think, 1.3, that will tell you how to set up your programming environment, and then also writing your first smart contract. We have provided some code there. It's just like a boiler code for you to use and write. So for the purpose of this session, I'll demonstrate something to you guys to start writing Solidity programming or Solidity code. It is recommended that you start with a license. Now, this is not mandatory, but normally, even if you don't provide it, the environment or the code editor will prompt you to provide it, but they will not mark it as an error. All right. So I always recommend that to start writing your code, you should provide the license. Now, what is the license about? All right. So briefly, but you find that in the course. But a license is like, one thing about Solidity code is that it is always public, because after everything, you publish it on the blockchain, which becomes public. People can view your code and analyze the code to see whether you have bugs or what you are really trying to achieve with the particular code. All right. So if you want to give people the chance to use your code anywhere, all that would depend on the licenses. So normally the open source licenses people use is the MIT licenses. And when you type here SPDX, then licenses, then MIT. This is how it is. But this particular code environment has made it very simple for you to do it. So when you come here, what I normally do is that I'll just start writing the pragma. Okay, and good. You can check that it was provided, XPDX, license identifier, MIT. So this is an open source license. All right, so the next thing is to start writing your Solidity code. And next thing after coming up with your license is to also come with this header, Pragma Solidity, where you give the version. So this one will determine which compiler version you will use in compiling your code, right? So here, Pragma Solidity, let's use something like this. Let's use something like this, 0.8.25. All right. So the 0.8.25, this is the version that we'll be using. It means that the code that we are going to write here, it should be able to compile with any Solidity compiler version from 0.8.25 and above. So what you are seeing here is an above, but it should not go above 0.9. So that is how it is. So whenever you see something like this, it has a range. So the range is like, if I take this one out, then I'll have something like this, greater than, am I right, 0.9. So something like that. Is it greater than or less than or equal to something like this? All right. So you check, you find everything in the code that we'll provide. But here we are using this version, which is version 0.8.25. Okay. So the next thing to do is to define or declare your contract. Now, how do you declare your contract? It's very simple to declare contract. So say contract, let's call it add number, contract add number, right? And then something like this. The contract is now declared. And this is a full contract. The only thing is that this is an empty contract. It can do nothing. So you're now going to write the contract logic. So contract logic will now enter here. So this is where the contract logic will enter. All right. But when you have something like this, it means that your smart contract is declared and well set up for you to now start doing everything. So the contract add, let's say we want to create a contract that will be able to add numbers together. All right. So after declaring your contract, the next thing you'll be asked to do is to compile your contract. So you come here and automatically the file is being selected here. So you don't need to select it again because it is selected. But in any case, when you get here and you first should check here to see whether the file selected here is the file that you are working on. All right. But that is selected. And then also the next thing is to check here which compiler version is being selected. So we are using a compiler version from 0.8.25, right? So you check here, you realize that we have 0.8.26 plus, which means that this one can compile, it can compile the version or the contract that we are working on. So you can just leave it there. But if any compiler version less than 2.5, something like this, you can see that here is being grayed out. It means that we cannot compile with this particular version because this is what we have selected here. So you have to always take this very serious. And this one like this too, it will refuse to because it is telling us that we are using this above. All right. So let's select this one. Okay. Now, let's compile. It is very simple to compile. Now, what is compilation? If you are familiar with C programming language, you realize that anytime you write your code, you need to compile the code. And compiling your code means that the code will be converted from a human readable, text like this to a byte code. And that byte code is the 0 and 1s, which can be understood by the computer which can be understood by the Ethereum virtual machine. And then also the 0 and 1s, as we all know, that's a binary, is what is being understood by the computer memory or the computer CPU, right? So every code you write in Solidity, which is a static, programming language, you need to compile it. And the compilation tool will determine whether you have errors in your code or not. So whenever you come here and compile, when you click on compile, right, you will see something here like a check. So this means that there is no error in the code that we are writing. But if there was an error, this one will not be marked as green. Now let's introduce an error to the code and you check something. All right, so I'm going to declare, say, string. No, let me say uint 256. Then I'll say sum. All right. So I want to introduce an error. I'll remove this particular semicolon. That means that there is now error in the code. But there are some times that you will not even recognize that there is error in the code. You'll only be able to find that when you go to the compilation, when you go to compile it, right? So in Solidity, if you remove the semicolon, it means that there is a problem in the code. But let's remove it and go back to compile and we see what will happen. All right, now we are in the compiler. We are here and let's click on compile. Nice. You can see red here. Compilation failed with one error. And when you check down here, too, we have pass error, expected a semicolon, but we got this. So this is how important or how interesting this particular thing is. it gives you the error. So it tells you that this is the error. So you can easily go there. And so in case you are not able to understand the error, you can ask an AI. So Remix has an inbuilt AI in it that in case an error occurred in your code and you don't know about the error, you can just ask the Remix AI and it will write everything. So let me do, for example, let's say ask Remix AI. Now check here, waiting for Remix AI to answer. Okay, it is writing everything. Let me expand here for you to see. Okay, so the AI has provided us with the solution to the error. So say, hello there, I am Remix AI or what and what. All right, so the error message you are seeing is quite straightforward. Pass error, expected a semicolon, but got this. All right, so it will even tell you the line and it will recommend the solution for you. So this is the recommendation here. You can check. It grabbed the code we have here and it added the semicolon for us, right? So when we go back here and add the semicolon, good. We can now go back and compile and you will see that the error is gone. Okay. So when you compile, where can you see the bytecode? After compiling, when you check down here, we have two things. Now we have the bytecode, which is here. All right. So we also have the ABI. So these particular things are very important, especially when you get to creating a front end for your smart contract. So the smart contract is like the back end for your app, right? And after creating the back end, you need to create the front end so that users can interact with your back end. So you can write your smart contract, everything about the logic of the contract on Remix. After everything, you compile it. And after compiling, it will generate the ABI and the bytecode for you. Now, the last thing you will do is to deploy your contract. Now, you're now going to take the code from this Remix environment onto the blockchain. And that is where the deployment comes. So you deploy here. All right, now we are done with the compiling. We move to deployment. All right, so when you get to deployment, it is also very easy and straightforward to deploy. First, now in writing a Solidity contract, when you get to the time you want to deploy, because there's one thing about a smart contract, you can't alter a smart contract. So the moment you deploy on the blockchain, you cannot go back to alter it again. And that is why we say it is transparent, it is decentralized, it is immutable, and all of that. So the reason why you cannot imitate it or do all of these other things like or trade and do what is because of the decentralization or the blockchain where you deploy it on. So you have to make sure that your smart contract or your code is well structured with no bugs. The logic is well curated, and then everything about what you want to achieve is there in your code before you now deploy to the main blockchain. So when you get to Remix provide you a virtual or a temporal blockchain environment, right? So here, this is an environment which Remix has provided so that you can use to test your smart contract. Now, after testing your smart contract, you can now connect to MetaMask. This is a MetaMask. You can now connect to MetaMask, then select a main network and deploy your contract on the main network. It is called a main net, right? And deploy on the main net. But because we are learning, we'll be using the Remix VM, that's the Remix local blockchain to test our smart contract. And also, after here, when we move to, what's the name? When we move further, we will now start using a test tokens on MetaMask. So this particular place, what you are seeing here, this environment is just like using a test network. So for those who have participated in our previous Web3 Builder workshops, you remember that you interacted with a network called the Arbitrum Sepulia network, right? So the Arbitrum Sepulia network This particular remix VM as the Arbitrum Secular network. Now, when you get here, you can deploy your contract on this particular environment, and you'll be provided with some test tokens. That's some test Ethereum tokens for you, so that you can use to play with your contract, right? So here, let's try to deploy this particular contract that we just created and deploy. All right, so Remix VM is selected, and here we are given this particular account. So this account is provided for us to use to test, and we have been given 100 Ethereum. This is not real money. This is not real money. So this is a test token. If I wish this was real money, so that we can share it, right? But unfortunately, this is not real money. This is just test tokens. But 100 Ethereum is not small money, actually. And you are going to even be provided with many accounts. I think there are like 10 or more accounts. So in case you exhaust one, you can 10, or in case you want to switch between different accounts to do your testing, you can use here to do all of that. All right, so this is the first account. All right, now you don't need to do anything here. Just leave here as it is. Leave here, don't do anything there. But contract, make sure that the contract you want to deploy is selected here, right? So here, add number contract is what we want to deploy. Okay, so the last thing is just to click on the deploy button, and that's all. It will be deployed. Now let's try it. Deploy. All right, so the contract was deployed. When you check down here, you can see here, mark as green, and everything about the deployment can be found when you expand it down. You can read more about it. The status, it says execution succeeded, transaction hash is provided, the block hash, and all of that. All right, but this is not even where we want to use. Let's go back to the deployment environment. All right, so after deploying your contract, the most important part to check is down here. We have here called the deployed contract, and this is the deployed contract. So to view your contract, you click on this particular arrow here. It will open the contract down. All right, so because we have an empty contract, you will see virtually nothing here. There's nothing here because this contract is empty. Now, I want us to do something so that we'll deploy again, and you'll see something. Let's delete it. Now, let's delete this particular deployment. To delete it, you just click here to clear. That means it has been deleted. All right, now let's go here and introduce something. So we have this variable. I'm going to add public sum, and let me just add a value. Say value is 230. Okay. So we now have a contract with a state variable called the sum, and it has a value of 230. Okay, now let's compile it again. Now, one thing about writing or using Remix is that after everything, if you deploy and then you go back to make changes on your code, you have to compile it again. If you don't compile again, then you come back to deploy, you jump the compiling, then you go to deploy, you are still deploying the previous code. So any change to the code, you have to go back to the compiling environment and compile again, right? So let's compile again. Okay, this is now compiled. Now let's go back to the deploy environment and deploy the code again. All right, so the code is deployed successfully. Let's check the code. Okay, so you can now see that we have this particular variable called sum, which the reason why you can view it is because I made it public. Now, don't be confused about this public. You understand these things are called visibilities in Solidity programming. So if you are familiar with other programming languages, they don't have this visibility stuff, but in Solidity, you'll be introduced to visibilities, and one of the visibility elements you'll be introduced is the public. So public, we have internal, we have external, we have view, and all of that, call data. So all of these ones will be introduced to it when as we move forward, right? So the moment you add public, when you deploy, you can now see the variable. So because it was public, you check it here. Now the value was what? The value is 230. Let's check to see. Let's click on sum to see something. When I click on sum, check down here and you can see 230. All right. So that means that the deployment is successful, and then this particular variable with the value is being declared here, and we can check the value. All right. So all of this, you will learn more about it as we move forward. We could also do something here instead of using the public, we could create a function to add. So let's say function. So it's function say store, function store, and then I'll make it public. All right, and then something like this. Okay, so what are we going to do? Let's say num, and then here we can now say sum is equal to num, right? So something like this. So what this will do is that this will now be used to store. All right, so sorry, we have to declare here. It's supposed to be uint 256, something like this. All right. So we can do something like this. So instead of this one now being a public variable, we can just leave it something like this, and then use a function to store the value. All right. So I'll go back to deployment. I'll delete this one. I'll delete it. I'll go and compile again. Compile. Now go to deploy and then redeploy. All right. So it is deployed. Check here. And then now you can see we now have the function store. All right. So this function store, it is taking a parameter. And when it takes the parameter, what it does is that it will assign the value to this state variable, right? So this is where you will do the testing. Let's store something like 1,000 and function 1,000, let me transact, so store it. All right, so it is now stored. All right, so there is something here. You won't be able to view this particular variable because it is not public. But if we make it public, after storing, you see something. So let's do something. I'm going to delete it again. Then I'll go back and introduce public here. I'll introduce public. Now, you can either introduce a public, we could introduce a public, or we can also create a function that will return the value of the sum without necessarily introducing this public. We can create a function called function retrieve, which will just be a view function. So when you click it, but we are not doing all of this today. This is just an introductory session. So I don't want to overburden you with so many steps, right? But let's do something like this. Now let's go back and compile again. Compile, right? Then go back to deploy and deploy. Okay, so we now have, when you click on sum here, we now have the store function, and then we have the sum variable. When you click on sum, the initial value is 0. Now let's use the function to store a value inside the variable. So I'll store 1,000 like this, or let me say 1,020. I'll store 1,020. I'll transact. Okay, now transaction successfully. Let's check this. It was stored. Now, when I click on sum, I'm now going to see 1020, right? So this is what we stored here. And now the variable here is no more 0 because this function has changed the variable to now have a value of a 100 and that's 1,020 number, right? So this is how simple Remix is. You're going to be doing a lot on Remix. So like I said, this is just an introductory session for you guys to get familiar with Remix. You should, yeah, you should take your time to explore around it. This is very interesting, especially when you get used to Remix. You will love Remix. I created some contracts that I did not even use hard hats, or I did not use VS Code to do, but I rather chose to use Remix, even though those contracts were not just some simple contracts. But one thing about Remix is, even though it is very risky writing a large contract on it, because the moment you refresh, sometimes when you refresh, or sometimes you come back to the browser and you might not find your code, but this doesn't happen very often, actually. So one thing you also going to do on Remix is to connect the environment to your GitHub. Okay, so let me just demonstrate something. Let's go to GitHub. I'm going to stop sharing this screen and I'll share GitHub with you to show you something. All right, but first thing, let me show you something here. Now, this is where you connect your GitHub. The settings. When you get to settings down here, you click on settings, and then it is very easy to do. Now, you are going to provide your access token, which you get from GitHub. Your GitHub profile, you get your access token from your GitHub profile. You come and paste it here. The next thing is to put in your username from your GitHub. So mine is, for instance, Sahadev. Sahadevgh. This is mine. Then you also put in your email address. So depending on which one you are using, you make sure that you put the right credentials. So if you make a mistake here, it will not work. All right. So what we are left to add here is the token. Now let me show you how to get your token. Let's go to GitHub and I'll show you where to get your token. Okay, yeah, let me see if I can open it from here. Let me stop sharing this one. All right. So let me share this one with you. Okay. So okay, this is it. GitHub share. Okay, so I hope you can see the screen.
Yeah.
All right. So now I showed you guys how to connect. When you go to settings on Remix, the next thing is to, so on Remix you provide your username, your GitHub username, and then also you provide your email address, right? So after that, you have to now provide your token, your access token. The only way you can push from Remix to your GitHub repo is to provide the token. So if you make a mistake with the token, you won't be able to push. Now let me show you how to get your token. When you log into your GitHub account, it is very easy to find your token. Just click on your profile picture on top right, top right. Click on your profile picture. Then find settings. Let's look for settings. So here is it, settings. Click on settings. Okay. Now, when you click on settings, you scroll down to developer settings because you are a developer. So you are dealing with the developer part of your account. So you come to your developer settings, you click on developer settings. All right. Then you need personal access tokens. You click to expand personal access tokens. Now, when you expand it, you need a classic token. So you just click on classic tokens. All right. So which is open. Now, I already have something like this called remix testing. I'm going to delete it. So I'll show you how to do yours. All right. So that is deleted. How do you do yours? You generate a new token by clicking here. Click on generate token, then generate a classic token. All right. So you'll be asked to put your password. All right. So I'm putting my password. When you get to that, you'll be asked to, okay, confirmed. Good. All right. So here, what is the token for? You write the token here. So you can write remix IDE, depending on what you want to write. So because you are dealing with remix, you can decide to just write remix IDE, remix IDE token, or just remix IDE. And here you can select expiration date. Okay, so the token will expire based on what you select here. So if you choose, you can expand it and choose how many days you want to. So you can say no expiration. If you want to just keep it forever, you can say no expiration. It means the token will not expire. All right. Then you should make sure that you click on repo, select repo here, and then select gist. All right. Now, all of these things you are seeing here, they have their functionalities, but you use them later. Anyway, but for the purpose of this week one and maybe the following few weeks, you can just click on repo, then gist, and that is all. Click on generate token. Okay. Now, when you click on generate token, a new token will be generated. So this is the new token. Don't close the page here. Click to copy here. Now you can decide to copy this and keep it somewhere. Or when you just copy, go back to your remix. So now we're going to leave GitHub. After copying here, you are done with the token side. That is all. So let's go back to remix and connect it. You can see how simple it is, right? Okay. So we are on remix. And now let's connect. So yeah, you just paste what you copied. You paste it here. Paste. It has been pasted. Then you save it. It is saved. So you can check down here. It says credentials updated, right? Okay. So you will now be working. Sorry. So you will now be working here. This particular gate button. When you come here, this is where you're now going to do all your magic of pushing the development environment. First thing to do is to initialize your repository. All right, so you initialize it. Now, like I said, we're going to have sessions this week to take you to this particular site, but rest assured, it is very easy to do. You don't need to you don't need to get yourself thinking so much about here. It's very simple. When you get here, you initialize it, but when you initialize, you have to go back to your GitHub and create a new repository. So after creating the repository, you copy the link of the repository, then you get back here and get back here. And so you just add it as a remote, you paste, then the repository name, you can say origin, then you paste the URL of the repository, then you add it. So after adding, you come to commit and commit. So you can say my first contract, something like that. And then you can click on commit. So here you get to understand all of these commands. So if you are dealing with a version control at GitHub, what you need to do first is to git add your work, right? So after git adding your work, you need to commit your work with a message. Then after committing with a message, you can now push it. So the same thing applies here. After you commit it here, you click on commit. When you check commits, you can see that you just committed this particular one. Say my first contract. All right. Now let's go back to commands, and then you push it. So you cannot push or pull because you haven't connected to or selected a remote. Like I just said, before you get to this stage, you need to create an empty repository on GitHub, then copy the public URL. You add it as a remote here, and then you now go through all of these processes, and then you push. Push, everything about your workspace will go to GitHub. Then you copy that one and submit. So that's how simple it is. All right. So we are done with the remix for today. All right. So in case you have any question to ask concerning what we just talked about, you can unmute yourself and do that. But guys, this particular week, you need to take it very serious because I have to assure you something. If you don't go through this week really serious, it means that you won't be able to cope with the rest of the weeks. Because practicals normally everything which is practical, the fundamental is what is important. So if you miss the fundamental aspect, it means that you cannot even join. Let's say we want to build a house, then the time we are doing the foundation, you are not there, you are only joining when the time we are roofing. It means that you cannot even build a house because you need a foundation. So even after participating, when we give you the chance to now create your own or to now build your own house, you won't be able to build your own house because you skip the foundation. And the foundation is the most important aspect of everything which is practical. So this particular week, you should take it really serious, ask questions. Like we said, this is not a classroom, and this is not like I don't even know how to say it. We are not even interested in the grades that you are getting for this particular bootcamp. Our interest is for us to learn, right? So forget about this getting 100 or whatever. What we are interested in is that you are getting the work done and then you are learning along. That is what we are interested in. This is not a classroom. The grading is just it's just for you to keep track of what you are doing and how you need to improve on yourself, but it doesn't say anything about you or your skill level in this particular bootcamp, right? So let's focus so much to the learning, and we are always available. Try all your best to participate in the sessions, because when we give you assignment, we are going to do the assignment with you during the sessions. Like I said, we don't care about, we are not interested in the grade. All we are interested in is for you to understand the work. All right, so during the sessions, if we give you a project during the sessions, we'll take you through, this is how you are supposed to go by the project, from this step to this step, and then this step to this step. But when you skip the session, it means that you will have to do it yourself. But if you are part of the session, you will be taken through how to go by all of this in a simplified manner. And you can always ask a question if um, you don't get some parts, just ask. Don't be afraid to ask, right? So this is like a learning environment where we are all learning together. And if you know more about coding, you will know that we don't have an expert in coding. Coding is like we are not interested in the code you are writing. Everyone is interested in solving a problem. So if you are in this particular field, our interest is not about how good you can write code, how good you can, come out with what we are interested in is, can you solve a problem with a code? So it doesn't matter even if you are learning with AI, or what is interesting is, or what is important is, can you solve a problem? We are using Google Meetup today. No one is asking how they were able to build Google Meetup. What was the code? How did they go by the code? Whether they copy somebody code and they made Google Meet or whatever. What we are interested in is it solving the problem? Is it giving us value? Right? So in learning code, our interest is try to solve problem, try to understand how to use this to solve a problem, how to use this to create some things or an app that can do a functionality. That is what we are interested in for this particular bootcamp. And during the hackathons that we'll be organizing in subsequent months, the judges are going to judge you based on these things: innovation, business strategy, um, like your technical flow and all of that. So this is an exciting journey, and we'd love to go with all of you on this journey. All right, so I think I'm done with my session. I have Likem and Multiple on the call as well, who are part of the team. All right. So over to you, Multiple. I'm done with my session. And this particular session is recorded, so you can play it later. I'll upload it immediately after this, so you can play later in case you need more clarification or you lost some place. You can play it. All right. Okay. So thank you so
Oh,
much,
okay.
everyone.
Another round of applause for Sahabia for this wonderful intro. I think
All right.
I don't
Thank
have
you.
much to say. I can see there is a whole lot of stress in around your eyes, and then I think we are not going to delay this meeting. All the major aspects of what is needed for the mastery cohort has been discussed, and then those who have been transitioned from the beginner cohort, I think you've already had the opportunity to experience some of these talks and how our weekly sessions or weekly tasks are being achieved. So based on that, this is going to be the same criteria as he mentioned, and things are going to flow in that direction. And the major aspect or the major part of things is that we play by the borrowed slogan: you either work hard or go hard, or we let you go home. I think we started with so many numbers, and today during the mastery cohort, you can see that the numbers are dwindling. And we know we anticipated all these things and we factored it into our enrollment model. We know very well that the number of people that will be enrolled, obviously, majority of them will drop before we get to the end of this boot camp. And we are even getting to the more intense aspects of it, which is going to involve the major part of coding and the brain usage. I think with the previous ones, I won't say any other person because it wasn't for any other person, because the any other persons were those that dropped out. The real ones were those that actually made it through to this one. Yeah, that is a credit to all of us. So, like I said, we are not going to delay much. If Likem has something to say, he can come on board and then we can do a wrap up and see what's going to happen.
Yeah. So if you also have a question to ask, or if you want to add any suggestion, or the floor is open. You can unmute yourself and do that.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah. Good evening.
My network wasn't stable, so I couldn't understand.
Fortunately, I can't hear you. Whether it's from
I said my network wasn't stable, so I couldn't understand anything. Like a few, I just it's on and off. I just couldn't
Fedor,
understand.
if you can reposition yourself, we can only hear the echo of it, but we can't hear you clearly.
or if you are using a headphone, maybe you can take it off for now.
Yeah, I have. I said my network wasn't stable, so I couldn't understand anything.
Okay. All right. Then
Okay, now you are clear.
this session is recorded, and we'll upload it and share the link with you so you can play it again.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
If you have a question or maybe you want to add something, you can also come on board and do that, or you can write it on the comment section. We can check on that and read it out. If it has to do with something we will address now, we do that. If it is maybe a recommendation, then we take it on board.
Okay. So 9-9. For the absence of no question, I think we can close the session for today, right?
Yeah.
What a good time, 9-9. It means
Okay.
we are quite glued. Yeah, sure.
All right. So have a good night, everyone, and see you this week. The live sessions. You guys are going to start doing the hard stuffs. So we're going to go hard, and that is how it is. You start applying all the algorithms that you can think about, and your coding knowledge will also jump in from this week. So let's get coding. Happy coding, everyone. All right.
Thanks.
Have a good
And
night. Bye.
please check your emails tomorrow for the release of week one task for Mastery Cohort. I think the earlier you start, the better you will be able to finish all the tasks and things will be better. Is Sabia, I mean, if somebody is asking a question in the, let me check.
Okay.
Okay. We are using the same Discord server, right? Yeah. I'll take this off to rewatch. Yes, Nathaniel, we are going to use the same Discord server for this. It's going to be the same for that.
Mm.
And as you said, we will publish the video for you to rewatch it. That will be okay for us too. Thank you. Okay, guys. I think Zabi has already made his final
Yeah.
comments, and in the absence of anything, we will call it a good night, and then have a blissful week for the first week of the mastery cohort. And don't be scared. Live sessions will be there to guide you. In case you
All
are
right.
facing
So
difficulties, you can always count on us. Thank you all for joining this meeting. We really
You're welcome.
appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
all right. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Uh, Yokoto, Likem, can you stay behind?